everyone, I'm Sheila. Welcome back to The Truth About Death and Dying. Today I want to take some time to talk about what is helpful and maybe not so helpful to people who are grieving. And this is meant to sort of be just a informative discussion about things that I've learned while doing Pathfinders and talking to the children about, what was helpful, what was not helpful, that kind of thing. When I was doing Pathfinders, I wanted to put together a booklet based on, and have the kids get involved with putting it together for like doing artwork and maybe little poems and just things like that, to just kind of guide other people who are trying to help those who are grieving in the process, and what's helpful and what's not helpful. So one thing I want to start off with is, what to say. People are always like, what do I say? What do I say? And often, I'm sorry is the first thing they say. And I remember someone saying one time, like, why, you didn't kill my dad. Why are you sorry? But the truth of the matter is that I'm sorry is a perfect thing to say, because you're sorry for their loss. And people have a hard time talking about death with people, especially when it's fresh. And so I think I'm sorry is perfectly fine to say. I honestly, I couldn't get the kids to really tell me anything that would have been more useful. But some of the things that are not useful are, I know how you feel. Did you just lose your dad? Have you lost your dad? Is your dad still alive? Or your brother or your sister or your mother, your grandmother, whatever it happens to be. That's probably one of the most insensitive things you can say to somebody is, I know how you feel. Or they're in a better place. And while you may truly believe that, the person that just lost someone very close and dear to them may not feel that way. They might feel like, no, they're better here with me. So I would, before you greet someone, or kind of prepare yourself, especially if you're going to a funeral or a wake or something like that, it doesn't have to be elaborate. Just, I'm so sorry for your loss. Simple enough. Another thing that the kids talked about when we were discussing, funerals and whatnot, people want to bring you food. Food is a comfort for us when we're grieving, and people want to bake you something to bring, because they need to be active. They want to be proactive in helping you grieve. So that's why people bring casseroles and pies and cookies and all that kind of stuff. Because the I guess the art of making it, I guess that's a good term as any, is therapeutic for the person who's bringing you this gift, because they're making it with love, and they're pouring their heart into it to make you feel better, and it's their therapy, it's their grief process as well. So even if you get 16 lasagnas or 16 tuna casseroles or whatever it might be, you know what? Take it in with a smile. Try to be grateful for that. You can always pitch it in the trash. Doesn't matter. But one of the things the kids had mentioned, they said, it'd be nice if someone just kind of brought us pizza or something we actually want to eat besides another lasagna or, another batch of chocolate chip cookies or whatever it might be. So I know that when my best friend was going through this whole thing, when her husband died, she had a great outpouring of support from the community. And I know she got a ton of gift cards to local restaurants, which was really helpful, because, you don't always want to eat casserole and the same kind of thing, just different varieties of it. But taking your family out, to a meal where you don't have to prepare anything, you don't have to heat anything, you don't have to clean up anything. You can just go have a meal, enjoy getting nourishment in your body, spending a little time with your family. That is helpful. That's really helpful. So I would just recommend, if you're thinking about, how can I help? How can I show my support? ask. And if you can't ask them directly, ask someone that knows them. What's their favorite restaurant in town? Ultimately, you're going to get an answer, and you really can't go wrong. Get them a pizza, a gift certificate to a pizza joint, and they can just get it delivered to home, and they can just eat it at home in the privacy of their own home. So those are kind of, I think helpful, and then there's no cleanup. There's no, oh, I got to get this pan back to this person, or whatever the case may be. So just some thoughts. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and it was going to be the title of this pamphlet that we were going to put out for Pathfinders, and we just, unfortunately, Linda Boyle, who headed up Pathfinders, died unexpectedly a few years back. But she and I had talked about this probably like close to a decade ago, of trying to put this booklet together and get the kids to input. And I was going to title this, really, I'd like to have that coat. And it's kind of, if you're going to put yourself out there and say, oh, if there's, and everyone, that's typical, oh, if there's anything I can do, just call me, let me know, that's another standard line people will put out to someone that's grieving. I've done it. I can't even tell you how many times I've done it. And I sincerely mean it. When I say to somebody, if there's anything I can do, and often just knowing that you have those lifelines, even if you don't utilize them, is really helpful, My sister-in-law and one of my girlfriends, her dad had died. My girlfriend, Terry's father, just died. And my sister-in-law was like, oh, she called her up, or I can't remember if she called her, it was in person, it was so many years ago. My sister-in-law had just bought a new winter coat. And she was having a conversation with Terry, and she said, oh, if there's anything I can do, and Terry said, I'd really like to have that coat. And Mindy laughed, thinking it was a joke, and Terry said, no, really, I want that coat. And Mindy didn't give her the coat, but, and I'm not sure Terry would have actually taken the coat, but years later, Mindy to this day, I think, still regrets not offering this coat to Terry to make her feel better, so, and I always just kind of found humor, and Terry has a great sense of humor, so I think, part of that was just her like, well, if you really want to know what would make me feel better right now, that coat would make me feel fantastic. So, be careful what you offer, because people might take you up on it, and if they do, then you should be prepared to give whatever you've offered. So, but often I think, people sometimes just need someone to talk to, just to vent. Another dear friend of mine lost her father in a tragic motorcycle accident, and just blew her world completely apart. Was totally unexpected. And I remember days of us just sitting and her just, and just trying to listen and let her just kind of talk her way through this grief, So sometimes just being there, just being a sympathetic ear, just letting them talk. You don't need to offer. And that's very hard for me, to not try to fix things and offer my story to, or just being quiet, being there, and letting them just get it off their chest is a huge help, because people need to talk about their grief. Some can, some can't, and so it's just ask them, what can I do? How can I be a support for you? Can I just sit and listen? Let's make a cup of tea and, just talk or cry, or just sit in silence together, hug. So just ask your friend, ask the person that you're concerned about, what you can do, but really listen and take cues, try to read the room, so to speak, because that can be very helpful if you just, ask them and really listen to what they need. Maybe it's your coat. I don't know. Are you willing to give it up? Maybe. Maybe not. But I think another thing is, people are often afraid to, like, if you run into someone in the grocery store and that they just lost their mom, let's say, and you approach, you give them a hug maybe, but then there's that kind of awkward, like, do I Do I say I'm so sorry for your loss, or do I just pretend it didn't happen, or, how do I handle the situation? I can tell you from someone who, not so long ago suffered a huge loss in my life, the death of my father. I welcome, and even I think part of the reason that people are hesitant to like bring up the person that died is they're afraid that the other person's going to lose their shit and start crying in the grocery store and whatever. That's okay. It's cool. And I can tell you this. The majority of the people that are fresh off a loss are going to be more upset with you if you don't mention the person that just died than if you do. So even if it brings tears, even if it chokes them up, even if it chokes you, it doesn't matter. That's just showing your humanity, and your kind and caring heart. So if you run into your friend in the grocery store, I hope you will say, if you haven't already said, if you've already been to the wake or you've been to the funeral and you've already voiced those condolences to your friend, then I wouldn't worry about doing that in the grocery store again. But I would say, how are you doing? Check in, and get a feel for it. And if you feel that they're really, suffering, maybe offer to take them to lunch or grab a coffee, or just invite them over and let them cry on your shoulder. I think it's important, depending on, again, where you're at. If you've already expressed those condolences, then maybe step 2 is check in. See if there's anything you can do to support them, because it's an ongoing thing. Grief is an ongoing thing. And I have a hard time believing that I'm ever going to stop grieving for my father. The days get easier as you move on, and, days turn into weeks and months and years. But the grief is always there. The grief, you're always grieving. If you love this person, if this person was close to you, you feel that loss every day, every single day. So, I think it's important, and if someone doesn't want to talk about, if you run into someone in the grocery store and you haven't given the and it doesn't have to be a big, all drawn out thing, just, a quick hug or a touch on the arm and, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, and let them lead the way. Let them lead from there. If they want to talk about it, listen. If they don't, you're going to know it right away. So, but to not acknowledge it, or to check in, or be like, oh, how you doing? How you doing? Okay? That would feel very, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Heartbreaking. I don't know. It would bother me if I ran into somebody in the grocery store after my dad died and they didn't, and maybe they don't know, and that's one thing. But I feel like who would probably know and who wouldn't know. So bring it up. It's okay. And if they cry, it's okay. They're going to be crying a lot. And so, but to not honor that person by mentioning them, I think is doing you and your friend a disservice. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about was hugging. And that was one other thing that the kids in group did particularly love at the funeral and the wake, because people, and I remember at a funeral I went to, and I didn't really know the family very well, but I went because of another connection. And the sister of this young man that died, I kept hugging her, and she's like, "Oh, you're a great hugger." And I was like, "Oh, I'm overdoing this. I just don't know I don't know. I'm so sad because it was a tragic death of a young man just starting his life, and I didn't know what else to do. I just couldn't stop hugging his sister, and just oh, but." Not everyone likes to be hugged, first of all. And even in the situation of grief and death and funerals and that, they don't necessarily want you to hug them. Even though for you, like for me, I'm a big hugger. I like to hug, and I have friends that are like, and I'm like, too bad, I'm going to hug you anyway, and I don't hold it too long, but I'll just give them a little squeeze and off we go. But keep that in mind if you're going to a funeral or a wake, and maybe you don't know. And I'm horrible. I should practice what I preach, honestly, because I can't help myself sometimes, but I do need to show more restraint. I do know that about myself. But if you're going to a funeral or a wake, and maybe some of the family members that are directly connected to this person that died, you don't know, maybe don't hug. Maybe don't hug them, or ask them, is it okay if I hug you, if you feel that need? And I, again, need to practice what I preach. But because not everybody likes to be touched and hugged, and especially when they're grieving, it's especially your senses are all over the place. So just keep that in mind, that not everyone likes to be hugged, and that's not what comforts them. And again, it's just ask. Just ask. I know it seems really simple and strange, maybe, but just, can I do? Is it okay if I give you a hug? Can I give you a hug? And if they say no, respect that. Respect that, Sheila. Yeah, respect that, Sheila. Take your own advice. So, anyway, that's really, I just wanted to kind of touch on those little tips and things I've been thinking about that are helpful or not helpful, after the fact. But, just try to be sensitive. Try to put yourself in their place and think about how you would feel or how you would want to be interacted with at that time, because it's strange and it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for stopping by. If you happen to like this podcast, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to my channel and like the episode, and hit the notification button if you want to be notified of future podcasts. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.